Good evening, fellow alumni. Happy Mother's Day to all. In India, we believe the following philosophy: Matru Deva Bhava, Pitru Deva Bhava, Guru Deva Bhava, which means our mother is our God, our father is our God, and our teacher is our God. Today, we have in our midst our Guru, Professor Ed Murato. Thank you, Prof, for taking the time out. Over to you, Prof.
Good evening to all of you. 6:30 p.m. in Manila. I don't know what time in other places, but I'm quite honored to talk to the alumni from many years all over Asia. So my talk today will be about transformative leadership during and after crisis. And I will just use COVID as a case in point, but I'll be talking in general because I think crisis and adversity will be a normal thing that will happen, particularly as the 21st century moves along. This is not going to be a news one. So if what you think will come and go, nothing else is out there to confront us, well, think again. If you look at human history, there are three major disruptors that force changes in how humanity conducts itself. Number one, of course, very obvious: wars, pandemics, ecological disasters. The number of deaths in World War One and Two, the Black Plague, which killed two-thirds of Europe, the Spanish flu, which killed 50 million people. These are not events that are once in a millennium. They happen quite often and are happening more often nowadays. So the second one is technological breakthroughs. When man started inhabiting the Mesopotamia area, which means between two rivers, which includes Iraq, Persia, and all of that, human civilization flourished. Agricultural breakthrough allowed them to build huge cities and not be nomadic or hunters. The wars, pandemics, technological breakthroughs caused the third disrupting event: large demographic and psychographic shifts. Now, these three major disruptors alter in a very big way our social, political, economic, ecological, and technological environment. They, as you know, affect industry, markets, enterprises significantly in terms of what business will thrive and survive, how people will do business, and how customers will behave. Definitely, new needs and wants will emerge as they are emerging now. However, people will have higher expectations and standards. They will say, we cannot go back to the past. We cannot be as unprepared. We are better than that. So after the disaster, after the crisis, humanity will begin to demand more. The Black Plague happened in Europe. I think it started in India, as my Google would tell me, which Europe killed two-thirds of Europe. And that was the 14th century. Guess what? In the 15th and 16th century, there was the Renaissance, the flowering, the blossoming of humanity in the arts, in the sciences, in philosophy, in mathematics, in every field, all together, all at once. And that came after the Black Plague. After World War II, the baby boomers, and there was a long period of economic growth and development for many nations after World War II. But why do business, government, and civil organizations not see the handwritings on the wall that these disruptors will come? They are actually predictable, and I will give you some examples. Well, I think it's because people tend to focus more on the past and the present, especially when things are going well. Why rock the boat? Why change the way we are doing things? When I took over a foundation doing microfinance, and I said, I want to shift it, not to microfinance, but to developing micro, small, and even medium businesses. I'm not into lending. I'm into enterprise development. I couldn't move my organization because we were doing so well. But when the crisis of 2008 and 2009 came with a big bang, that's when they were willing to change. Because adversity was so huge that they had to look forward to a leader that can lead them out of their misery, out of their failure. I've attended many board meetings, management meetings, and more time spent on discussing past accomplishments or what's happening in the present. I've attended these meetings and 90% on the past and somehow, reluctantly, 10% in the future. Somebody will present a plan, blah, 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 blah. Say, okay, that's a good plan. Nobody examines the vision. So very little time spent on the future, on future thinking, on forecasting, and even foretelling. That's my experience with many companies. Very few are futuristic in orientation. Why? Many are uncomfortable about uncertainties or are willing to make fearless forecasts. Corporations are built as such that if you stick your head out and say, I'm making a fearless forecast of this scenario, this event will happen in the future, and therefore this is what we should invest our money today, that guy will not stick his head out. Because if it turns out to be wrong, his head will get chopped off. They might get blamed for the decisions made because of the wrong forecast. It's easier to solve past and present problems than bet on promising opportunities based on fearless forecasts. While I love the case method very much, it's very good in problem solving, critical thinking. In fact, in our WACs, especially during our time when we were given a WAC every week, we were always asked to state a central problem, state a central issue. It's problem-oriented. And a problem occurs in the past. Something happened that dislocated the smooth flow of things in the company. And a problem is an aberration, a distraction. And you want to solve that quickly so you can get ahead and move on. And opportunities are not talked about too much. That's why when I designed the ME, I said it's going to be more opportunity oriented. Sure, we will be able to tackle problems. But entrepreneurship is not about lingering in the past. It's about moving forward, getting ahead, taking a quantum leap to the future. But that's not what the MBA is all about. But nobody understood entrepreneurship at the time that I was proposing it in 1994. So, if future opportunities are difficult enough to deal with, what more future vulnerabilities, future crises, disasters, and devastating disruptions? People don't want to listen to it. Oh, they don't want to listen. There's a great need, therefore, for futuristic thinkers, visionaries, predictors. At the rate of change we are now experiencing in the 21st century, we need leaders who live in the future and are brain wired to be transformers of the present. That's why you're called a leader. You're supposed to lead out of the present. So we need transformative leaders who will embrace futurism as a way of life. Again, many organizations do not do this. They do not believe in futurism as a way of running the organization. But how exactly can we become futuristic, transformative leaders? The first is to realize that the future is already somehow being manifested in the present. In the past, maybe we felt it faintly. We must pick up the clues by isolating happenings or occurrences cropping up here and there at the grassroots level. John Naisbitt wrote the megatrends in 1982. His technology was to subscribe to 60 regional newspapers in the US. Read all of those 60 newspapers, and he will clip the unusual occurrences. But since his research was 10 years in the making, he was looking that some things were happening more and more often. And because of that, he said, this will happen in the 1990s, and this will happen in the 2000s, which did. Okay, so let's talk about John Naisbitt when he authored Megatrends. So he was just clipping newspapers, buying them from 60 places in the US. And then he could make these predictions, which actually proved to be very, very accurate. He extrapolated them to groundswell and then to become megatrends or major environmental changes that will affect humanity significantly. But today, we live in the digital age where information has become overwhelming. But we have also developed supercomputers with super softwares that can do big data analysis. So we can perhaps even do better than John Naisbitt, but not so fast. Even supercomputers have not yet developed great intuition. That ability to short-circuit all the logic and jump to a conclusion, knowing the conclusion without knowing why you know why that is true. Intuition short-circuits all logical algorithms. But luckily, we have more sophisticated artificial intelligence technologies that will perhaps approach intuition. We also have human experts working with plenty of information who have dared to forecast future events. But like the prophetess Cassandra of Greek origin, the god Adonis was wooing her and said, I will give you a gift of prophecy if you marry me. Cassandra refused. And Apollo said, you know what? You can prophesy, but nobody will listen to you. So this is now called the Cassandra effect. And it happens all the time. I'll give you some examples. People said that we were caught unaware in the 1997-98 property collapse and the following Asian financial crisis because most banks were invested in properties. But I do remember reading a report from Daiwa Bank of Japan and DBP in the Philippines that the property market will collapse in 1995. And what was the main critical variable they were looking at? Which nobody was looking at. Take-up rate. In other words, if you put up a building,
How soon will it be bought or leased? How many will buy or lease it within 6 months? Now, Makati at the time was already falling from 90 to 70%. And Ortigas already fell from 70% to 30%. But nobody listened. And so the property collapsed all over Asia. So it was predicted, but nobody listened. So that's one example. This pandemic, Bill Gates had a show in 2015, not a show really, but a video, and he said, you know what, a pandemic is coming. And he was looking at trends, SARS, MERS, H1N1, and he said, hey, it's going to come. Are we prepared? We're not prepared. But again, nobody wanted to listen to that. So nobody prepared. Nobody prepared for a pandemic. And here we are. So the data trends were very, very obvious. But very intelligent people refused to acknowledge them. When I was in AIM in the early 1994, 95, I was already telling the board of trustees at that time even, you know what? The MBA will decline. And I was only watching trends in the US, in Europe. I said, if it's happening there, it will happen here. But maybe it did not happen until much later. Because we had our biggest classes of the MBA in 97, 98, and so on. So people refused to listen to me because things were doing great. And in 1994, I was looking at the data. There were only 2,000 large firms in the Philippines. And this was the market of AIM. And 99.9% were micro, small, and medium. And I said, who's going to take care of all them? Who's taking care of them? Nobody was taking care of them. So I told the faculty and the board, we have to go into entrepreneurship. This will be a major trend. I said, no. So can you at least make me research? That's why I went to India, Ramesh, I interviewed Ramesh. I went to Indonesia, I went to Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, with a band of 6 researchers, 4 faculty members. They were allowing us to research. But when we were about to launch it in 1999, it's no. You have to do more research. I said, tell you what, I'll run it with 25 students because our break even is 20. Lo and behold, 100 came. The following year, 100 came. And still, entrepreneurship is not where AIM is all about. So they got rid of it in 2008, 2009. But humbly, eating humble pie, they put it back again in 2016. Why aren't we listening to information? Why aren't we listening to trends when they're so obvious, they're so manifest? Because when things are going very well, we don't want to. We don't want to. I had a student, an entrepreneur, he was making a research. And he said, you know, sir, the hardest thing to predict are prices, metal prices, commodity prices. I said, what are you into? Steel. I'm making nails, metal runners in Cebu, blah, blah, blah. I said, you know what? Get data from only 2 countries. I said, if you can get 4, fine. China is the biggest producer. US is the biggest consumer. And then you can add Russia, you can add India. But I want a 30-year trend. And tell me if you see any pattern. And after poring over this data, I said, you know what, sir? Every time the capacity of China's steel mills are about to be reached, that's when steel prices go up. Then China puts up all of these mills again, and then prices go down. There you are, I said. So can you do it for your company? So he went to his parents and asked them to borrow 1.5 billion pesos. I almost fell off my chair. I didn't tell you to do that. But they went ahead, they bought 1.5 billion pesos in steel. 6 months later, graduation time, the parents came up to me. Thank you very much, sir. Why? You made us very rich. We made 3 billion pesos because the prices doubled. As you taught my son, I didn't tell your son. He did all of that studying. I just told him the process of predicting, of forecasting, of futuristic thinking. Today, we live in a digital age where information has become overwhelming. But we have developed these supercomputers and super softwares that can do this big data analysis. So we can, in fact, do better. Second, realizing that the future can be seen today. You can actually see it. The futuristic transformative leader must draw up the most likely scenarios when this prediction materialize. You have to say, okay, what's the probability? It will be this level, that level, that level, that level. So, what are the scenarios for future opportunities? And therefore, what levels of preparation and investments must we need to do today, given the most probable scenarios? For future crises and adversities, continuity plans must be developed to address the different ferocity levels of the crises and adversities for both opportunities and adversities. And we should come up with immediate, intermediate, and long-term responses. The fly in the ointment is that the new opportunities will bring their own unpredictabilities as to the outcomes, and thus new crises will arise. Similarly, the new crisis of adversity will definitely be accompanied by opportunities. So it goes either way. The third that the futuristic transformative leader must do is to determine the critical variables that will most move the future scenarios. Today's forecasters use mathematical algorithms to make future trend lines. But unfortunately, they are assuming that the critical variables causing those past and present trends will remain the same. But the large disruptors will also change the critical variables that will shape the future beyond the disruption. So the transformative leaders must get a good handle on the future critical variables. They will change. So if the variables today are, I must have a good retail location to sell my goods, and suddenly there's a disruption, and people become familiar with delivery, well, it shifts from having a good retail location to having a very good logistical system. So the critical variables now defining future sales will be different. So let's look at some things that I myself am predicting. And therefore, critical variables will change. Now, the critical variables are the ones that most affect the outcome you're looking for. Sometimes we're just looking at the outcomes, but if you want to make a futuristic forecasting, what you should forecast is how the critical variable will behave, not the market per se. The market will be driven by the critical variable. So here are my own example. China will no longer be the factory of the world. They will move out of that. But they will have more economic and political influence, even as many nations will be more wary of its future power and will somehow build their own power blocks. China just declared recently that they're creating this independent currency that is not tied to the dollar. Now that changes many things. Just as a digression, we economists are often wrong. Because when we make assumptions about the future, we say something, ceteris paribus. You know what that means? It's Latin phrase. It means everything else remaining the same. Hey, but heck, nothing ever remains the same. That's why economists like me are always wrong. But sometimes they're so obvious, I ain't wrong. In the next 25 years, science and technology will advance so far on human health to the point that human immortality can be attained to this cloning, genome, DNA, stem cell research. You can replace your own organ with your own clone organ. You can take away all the bad DNA and genomes and all of that. Even my doctors tell me that. Ed, your stem cells in Germany, the pluripotent stem cells can produce 1 million Ed Moratos. Oh, heaven help all of us. So that will happen. The three biggest hindrances to human immortality will be wars, pandemics, and ecological disasters. Global investments will pour into deterrent and threatening super weapons, as the US is doing, as China is doing, as Russia is doing. Better pandemic antidotes and faster cures. Bill Gates is promising the first one that finds a vaccine, I will make 10 humongous factories to produce them. Investments in climate change mitigation. The world has seen recently how the ozone layers improved because of less carbon emissions during COVID. And so I think people are now going to say, hey, if it worked that time, we saw the good effect, let's do more of it. As to business, the trend in delivering products and services to homes and offices will accelerate. Before this crisis, I'm a director at KFC. The GM was telling me, Ed, our sales in delivery is moving up, our own delivery. What surprised me is the Grab food. And I'm finding out the cost of doing that is the same as our own delivery system. But that changes the ballgame for us. In the past, we would invest 25 million to 40 million per site. But if in the future that changes, then there's a new ballgame in town. Totally new. So people will rethink their strategies. People will become more conscious of sanitation and hygiene, safety, social security. Why is the Philippine government having a hard time as other governments? Because their social security system is very poor. Now, and then people sometimes say, there's a good economic policy and there's a bad economic policy. I don't think so. Economic policies and strategies must fit the situations they're in. Let's take America. The conservatives won. They said, let's reduce income taxes considerably. And what will happen? America will be great again. We'll have economic, and it happened. Stock market zoomed. Unemployment is at the lowest at the US. That means to say people have jobs and therefore are no longer poor. So that economic policy is good when things are doing well. So here comes COVID. But Trump has cut Obamacare. He has cut these investments in health for the aged and all of that. And COVID comes, and I say, oh, this thing is going to bite him in the ass. So sometimes we say, oh, I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, I'm a this and I'm a that. We put labels onto ourselves, and these labels stick us to a particular strategy and policy. That's why we cannot read situations very well. We begin to believe in our own beliefs that when conditions change, we just stick to them. And that's why we're not able to cope. Education as we know it will go more digital, virtual, global, but quality of content, process, and delivery must be improved. You know, right now everybody's doing webinar and all of that. I said, you know what, if you think that you have found the promised land in education through these webinars, think again. They're not yet very good in producing critical thinking and creative thinking. Maybe they are good in having classes, lectures, questions and answers. But that's not what education is all about. So we need to invest in process, the delivery mechanism that must be improved considerably. Virtual communities will pervade social life. Mental health, the next battlefield, as there are less and less human interaction, less and less family support groups. Because as this happens, they will erode the sense of belonging, of security, and comfort in family intimacy. They've made a humongous research on who are the people who live the longest. And diet comes in only third, and exercise comes in fourth. You know what the first two are? A very good support system, and that's family. Second is very frequent human interaction. Now, as technology takes over and you take out those top two, as families become more nuclear, more complicated, single mom, single pops, gays and lesbians, it will change completely the future. And as people become alienated, socially alienated, mental health will be the next battleground. So what does it mean for us today, the 21st century, as leaders? We need mental steadfastness, mental soundness, and mental serenity. I think we have to go back to the philosophy of the Stoics during the Greek time, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. And they were saying that the best way to deal with disasters, sufferings, pain, even death, is to stay calm, have equanimity. Do not be overjoyed when you are successful and oversad when you are failed. You must have that balance, that centering of life. Because what affects us is how we react and judge. Those things that are happening around us, they will happen whether we like it or not. But what we have mastery of is how we react and how we judge. So I suggest you study the Stoics and go back to that philosophy. So we need this mental steadfastness, soundness, and serenity during times of adversity. During good times, your IQ and EQ will carry you a long way. So your test at AIM will carry you a long way. But, you know, Junbo was introducing EQ. Problem with EQ is you can cheat the test. But during times of crisis, there's another quotient that becomes very important. This is the adversity quotient, or the ability to face, handle, and overcome devastating conditions. And people with the high adversity quotient, or AQ, have learned to manage adversity using CORE, or CORE. Now, the transformative leader during times of adversity must master 3 of the 6 adaptive leadership styles propounded by Daniel Goleman. He says there are 6 leadership styles. Authoritative, not authoritarian. Authoritative, you're knowledgeable, you know what you're doing, you're decisive, people look up to you, you're the experts. and you have better command of the situation and better can decide better. Authoritative leadership is always number one. The number two is affiliative. People skills. Can you harmonize the organization? Can you make them work together? Number three, pace setting, particularly the 21st century. Companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, they are pace setting. You know, the people who put them up are out front, and they must hire people who can match their pace. So we will see more and more of these companies. And therefore, there will be greater and greater demand on high IQ individuals. And that's where maybe the rate of suicide in colleges will go up because they cannot cope with the pace setting style. Coaching, developing winning teams, entrepreneurial organizations, making sure that we have the right strategies, the right way of motivating smaller groups of people so that they can contribute to the bigger good. Democratic, consensus building, trying to get the opinions of everybody. And finally, coercive. Now, Daniel Goleman says the coercive leadership shouldn't be used most of the time. It's the worst leadership style. But in times of adversity and crisis, it comes up number one. Who are the two organizations that are coercive? Usually the military and police. They're trained to be coercive because when they attack, when the captain says, let's attack that hill, everybody ought to follow, unless it's just a captain going up that hill. So in times of adversity and crisis, coercive leadership suddenly goes from the bottom to the top. And that's what we need. Now, in transformative leadership, that comes up number one. Number two, that you must put ahead is affiliative, or I will term it compassionate leadership. See, what the people are looking for today is somebody to hold their hand, somebody to say, you're going to be all right. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make sure that the company will do its best to survive so that your jobs will survive, your family will survive. You have to put on this hat of the nurturing leader. This is no time to leave your people. This is the time to be with them, to be one with them. This is not the time to get lost, to be scarce. And the third is authoritative leadership. People must say, hey, you know what? Our boss knows what to do. You know what? I think we are so confident about him, we'll put our fortune in his hand. Because he is a very discerning boss and he can come up with the right solution. So these are the things, these are the styles that will work during times of crisis. So what virtues are needed in these three leadership styles? For coercive leadership, the virtue is discipline. If during good times you didn't have discipline in your organization, during bad times you will be in complete chaos. You know, I was just looking at when COVID was starting here in the Philippines, and they were starting to mobilize the police and the military in the streets. Somebody, you know, the newspaper columnists were commenting, this is not a military crisis. This is a health crisis. Why are there policemen? Right? You know, the usual stuff. But sure enough, you need a strong political will, a strong military presence, discipline needed in lockdown to be able to make it work. Only if you stop the circulation of the virus can you actually control it. So discipline was quite important. People saying, oh, we are a democracy. Oh yeah, but this is not the time for democracy. So discipline is the virtue most needed in coercive leadership. Number two, and this might sound corny to some of you, compassionate leadership, the virtue is love. Now, each and every one of you, you might find that strange to say, you know what? The biggest virtue in running your company should be love. When Gina Lopez was saying that to ABS-CBN, oh, they were not listening. Oh, that's touchy, feely stuff. But let me ask you, what drives you to do well in your business, to do well in your career? And I've been around for 70 years. The primary motivating factor for any of you is love for your family. Isn't it? Your business is there for your family. If it cannot support your family, then it's no good. Peter Drucker once said, you know, there's a lot businesses can learn from non-profit organizations. Why is it they get paid one half and then they work 16 hours a day in the mountains? Why? Because they have a sense of mission. They love the people. They love their work. They love their mission. Love is what drives non-profit organizations. And they work for much less. And Peter Drucker said, what if you can infuse that sense of mission in your business organization? Wow! Wow! That will be the best business organization ever. But it is not driven by greed and wealth. It's driven by love. Love for the product, love for the customer, love for the employees, love for the suppliers. And the money will just be a result. The third virtue we need for authoritative leadership this time is wisdom. What is wisdom? It's not high IQ either. It's more akin to EQ. The ability to discern. But what keeps us from discerning, as I said earlier, is our biases, our prejudices. You know, I believe in this philosophy, this ideology, this and that and that and that. Such that when we are confronted with facts, we refuse to listen. But wisdom is about discernment. It's about looking at many perspectives, looking at different points of view, listening, and saying, yeah, he has a point here. She has a point there. And what's the best decision for the collective good? So wisdom is not as easy. When I ask people, you know, tell me the people who've been the wisest in your life. You know, they'll always say their parents. It's not some genius that they encountered in school. But why? Because their parents are able to discern for them what is very good for them, even though they might not realize it. So we are in crisis, and there's a way for managing the crisis. There's a way for dealing with it. But when winter comes, when COVID comes, can spring be far behind? Can there be a renaissance? Can there be a baby boomer stage? There will be. There will be. Even as one is managing the crisis, one should prepare for the changes that will happen after the crisis. Certainly, there will be new opportunities. But who will grab them first? Who will be the first mover? Who will lead the way? Who will be the transformative leader after the crisis? It requires 4 essential traits of the transformative leader. We require 4 transformative traits of the transformative leader. So I'm now preparing you for that situation, going from crisis to after crisis. Number 1 trait of the transformative leader is to be a good scholar, sensor, and seer. Scholar. We've learned that at AIM, a good environmental scan, a good internal scan of the organization, situational analysis, environmental analysis. But mind you, I said, just don't look at the trends in the environment, look at the critical variables causing them. That's more important. Censor. Do you have a pulse of the people? You regularly conduct people indices on happiness, motivation, esprit de corps. Or are the people to you just workers in your organization? And are you a good seer? As I told you, my hypothesis before, the 21st century requires more and more the futuristic leader. So these three, foundation, you study well, you sense well, and you see well. The second, are you a warrior king and a philosopher king? Now, the warrior king is the strategist, the one who makes changes. But oftentimes, the warrior king is not the one that really makes the profound transformation. Let's go back to China. The first emperor was a warrior king. He united China. But the second one was a philosopher king that brought China to greatness, the greatest power during its time. That happened again during Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. Deng Xiaoping was the warrior king, got rid of all the Europeans away from China, got rid of the nationalists, and put his brand of government. But for 30 years, China had a famine. They were ridiculing Deng Xiaoping, putting a dunce cap on his head, blah, blah. But when Deng Xiaoping took power, he was the philosopher king. And in China, they have this big slogan, they have these streamers, and that, they're run by moral values, Confucian values, and by these sayings. That's why Mao Zedong has a red book. Anyway, Mao Zedong Deng Xiaoping just said one thing. To be rich is glorious. One little sentence. And the Chinese look at one another. Hey, it's okay to be rich. It's okay to bring back our self-motivation, our entrepreneurial spirit. And China in the next 30 years became a great country. What happened? What happened? China is driven by a philosopher king, which continues to this day. So you need the strategies. That's what we learned from AIM. But what we didn't learn from AIM is how to be a good philosopher king. To have temperance, to have wisdom, to see the future, to have kindness, to have compassion. We didn't learn that. We thought it was a dog-eat-dog world every time, all the time. Third requirement for transformative, you must be a magician and an entrepreneur. A magician, an innovator. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Zuckerberg. You must be a magician. If you are a mediocre innovator, you'll get left behind. You will eat dust. But innovation, coming up with new ideas, is not enough. You must make them work in the battlefield. And that's where you need the entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is about changing paradigms, catering to new markets with new products and services. It's about going out there and being on top of a field which was not there before. Fourth, you must be a maestro. You have to conduct. You're like a conductor, you have to conduct your symphony. Because things will change. Maybe your string section, your percussion section, all of that will change. Suddenly you're dealing with different instruments. And you must orchestrate them in a different way. But you must also be the mentor. Make sure your people are getting in step with you. So let me summarize this for you. First, scholar, censor, seer. 2, warrior and philosopher king. 3, magician and entrepreneur. 4, maestro and mentor. Aha. But what are the adaptive leadership styles after the crisis? Watch out. Another bottom dweller, which was not recommended in the studies because they are too difficult, and I'm predicting it will happen, is the pace-setting style. The 21st century will demand pace-setting leaders. So these two bottom, the bottom coercive rises to the top in crisis, but after the crisis, the Renaissance period, you need the pace setters. So are you a pace setter or a follower? Two, the authoritative style still stands tall there among the first three. So it will now come up to number two because you have to use your IQ power, your brain power, your EQ power. Authoritative comes in. And the third is the coaching style because now you have to organize teams. You say, go get this. And you have to coach these teams so that they will win in whatever pursuit, game they are playing. The democratic style, which many of us love, can be employed when things settle down. Notice that democratic styles work when things become bureaucratic, large, complicated. But these large bureaucratic organizations oftentimes get overtaken by this entrepreneurial organization. And so there was Nokia loading it, and where's Nokia now? Kodak was loading it, IBM was loading it, where are they now? Because after a while, when it gets bureaucratic and too democratic, you cannot surge forward. Now, what are the virtues required in pace setting? Oh, you must be awful creative, but not just creative in a chaotic fashion, but you must be able to focus creativity, no? And make that creativity work. You know the famous phrase of Edison: 1% inspiration, that's the creative idea. But creativity has another portion. You have to make it work. That's the 99% perspiration. He had a bright idea, the incandescent lamp. Oh, 1%. But you know where his real effort was? Experimenting on 2,000 filaments that will make that bulb work. That's perspiration. That's why you have, in pace setting, you have to have, creative people, but they must work their ass off. In the authoritative style, you must be comprehensive because it's a brand new battlefield out there, but you must now do it with conviction because there will be so many opportunities, so many changes that you must see, this is the one I should follow and have the full conviction and confidence to carry that one through. Otherwise, if you're faltering, you're wishy-washy, it won't happen. Coaching. What are the virtues required? Your full commitment to your team, your ability to make them collaborate and work together harmoniously. Transformative leader after the crisis must have, and this one I totally invented, a high audacity quotient. Audaciousness is making things bigger, bolder, and better. This is not the time to say, I'll be careful. I'll manage the risks and I'll sit back. Let somebody else take the risk. No. This is not the time for it. If you want to be at the forefront, be audacious at this time. Because this is the time nobody else wants to be audacious. And the first horse off that block wins the race. So, how high is your audacity quotient? And therefore, by the way, I will go back to adversity quotient really on how to develop that, which I skipped. But I'd like to focus first on the audacity quotient. In the audacity quotient, the one that should work most is your self-motivation. Now, Daniel Goleman, in his emotional intelligence book, said there are 5 components of emotional intelligence: self-knowledge, self-management, self-motivation, understanding of others or empathy, and managing other people. But the most important is self-motivation. The self-driven person is the one that will succeed the most. So the one that has the highest motivation index, the one who is most self-propelled, will win. So that's our first M, motivation index. Number 2, your innovation index. Can you embrace new business paradigms? Can you create new ideas, new products, and make them work? Making them work well, that's a critical factor there. Innovation index. Is your company going to be same old, same old? Or are you going to put as much weight in creative thinking as critical thinking? For that matter, AIM has to change. You cannot be in just the case method. Case method is not good for opportunity thinking. It's not good for innovation and creativity. I've studied 1,000 cases. Believe me, I know what I'm talking about, as you have. We have not been taught to raise our innovation index. So when I was introducing in 1989 such subjects as creativity and intuition, people were saying, oh, he's this crazy professor again. I just found legitimacy when in 1994, Stanford University introduced the same subject. And then followed by other universities, creativity, intuition, and management. And suddenly I'm legit. But you find that course now getting more and more in, even in UP. I was just called by somebody, please help me do this creativity and intuition in UP. AIM, same old, same old. Same old, same old. Third, your navigational index. This is your ability to set clear goals, directions, and to me, very, very important, the appropriate performance indicators or the quantified ends in mind. You see, when you are strategizing, a strategy is only a means. To me, the real thing there is, can you quantify your outcome? You know, sometimes people tell me, you know, I want to be the leading, the best. I said, quantify to me. What does the leading mean? The leading in terms of sales? The leading in terms of technology? What? What do you mean by it? Quantify. And those things people don't quantify. People say, oh, I have a quality product. Can you quantify it? Can you prove to me? Because if you cannot quantify it, then I don't believe you. So when we strategize, the most important thing is, can we bring that vision, mission, objectives, KRAs, down to the performance indicators that can be measured? But not just at the top. Can you bring these measures all the way to the last worker? You know, I'm experimenting in my own organization where we're managing one of our regions without managers. I call it managing without managers. First, we took out the branch managers, then the team leaders, regional managers. So now these people are formed in tandems. They are actually, we call them enterprise developers, growers, evolvers, edge officers. Their job is to, from livelihood, to make them go to micro, to make them go to small, and finally medium. Really nurture them. But we had to train them a lot in order to get there. So we are not a lending institution. We are a developmental institution. What's our performance standard? Not how well we are doing financially. Because most financing companies, they will look at loans disbursed, past due, portfolio at risk, etc., etc. You know what our performance standards are in the social index? How much have the assets of these companies we're financing grown? Their sales, their net worth, their employment, Are they sending their children to school more? Do they have better health situation? Because to my mind, if you just stick to be a financing company and you just have the standards, you have a great disservice to humanity. But these standards are keeping us in check, keeping us honest, keeping us in line. That it is not just about you, it's about your customers. But how many of us really measure the delight that our customers or their complaints? Well, some people don't like to hear customers complain. When I was in AIM, we had one particularly difficult customer, the World Bank. They must make sure all the cases are done very well, blah, 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 blah. Meticulous on time, meticulous on method. And our program assistants will shy from it. I said, no. If we can serve this one difficult customer, we can serve everybody else. So please make the World Bank happy. And that's my performance indicator to you. From the top to the bottom. That's why people don't ask me anymore, sir, will we have a bonus in December? So what do you think? What is your performance? Because now we give automatic. Of course, 30th month pay is by law. 14 months, 15, 16, 17, depending on performance. So nobody asked me the question, sir, will we have a bonus? I don't give an answer. How are you doing? Oh, you're doing that well. Oh, then you will get a 20th month bonus, which they get quarterly anyway. So I'm managing without managers because my performance indicators are objective and they know that if they attain this performance, they will definitely get the rewards. That's how you manage people. Make them entrepreneurial in their own right. Make them control their own action. Make them manage themselves rather than us worrying about them all the time. So, navigational index, setting clear goals, performance indicators, or quantified ends in mind. So that's M for motivation, I for innovation, N for navigation, and D, the last one, is your discipline index. Now, let me go back to adversity. How do you manage adversity per se? Well, there's 4 different. So this is mine for audacity, and there's also 4 called CORE, C-O-R-E, for adversity. First is C, control. In adversity, there are many things we cannot control. Don't worry about them. There's nothing you can do. Be a stoic. But there are things within our control. And usually that is yourself. And there are resources still at your control. People who built up a good balance sheet will survive better. You know, many times we look at the income statement, cash flow. To me, if you're a good finance person, a good executive, the balance sheet is king. The balance sheet contains actually all the financial statements. You compare 2 balance sheets, in terms of cash, that's the cash flow. You compare the 2 balance sheets, that's the funds flow. You can see the income statement in the growth of the net worth. And then it shows you your wealth. How much can you draw of those resources and forces, not just tangible wealth, but intangible wealth, your intellectual capital, your contacts, your connection, your social network. If you have a good balance sheet, you will survive the crisis. And then there is that liability. Hopefully you don't have too much of that. That's why I always manage the balance sheet prime and foremost. What's controllable? You're looking at it. What are the things I can control? Second, of the things I can control, what do I own to do? And what does each and every person in our organization own? As I own is taking full accountability and responsibility for that thing. Third is reach. Do not allow a crisis or adversity go beyond its sphere of influence. Sometimes we bring our office problem to our home and vice versa. Now, in times of great adversity, of course, it affects many, many things. But the last bastion you must protect is your own mind. Is your own mind. So do not allow adversity to reach the inner recesses of your mind, to take control of you, to paralyze you. So I said, mental steadfastness, mental soundness, mental serenity. That's your last bastion of defense. So that's our reach. Do not allow it to reach other facets of you, especially your mind. Finally, do not allow it to last longer than it should. Now, you said that's very difficult. We don't know. Yeah, but you can take drastic measures. You can control. Lockdown is a control factor. Government owned it. And the more government is in control, and the more it owns that lockdown, the more it puts discipline, the less they can be in charge of both the reach and the endurance, how long it will last. So managing adversity is core. Control, ownership, reach, and endurance. After crisis is mind, motivation, innovation, navigation, and discipline. To make sure that it happens. That during the crisis, mindset should be, I will survive and I will even thrive beyond survival. But after crisis, the mindset should be, I will be the new rule maker and I will rule. I will quantum leap the past. I will become much bigger than myself. Therefore, seek the highest of all motivations and areas you will innovate on rather than money. And I'm saying this to businessmen like you. Being your main driving currency, make it love, altruism, and service to humanity. Aspire for greatness. You know, there's a certain billionaire that has become my idol recently. That's Bill Gates. I didn't used to idolize him. Became the richest man in the world because of Microsoft. And there were stories, terrible stories about him on how he got that, how he shoved everybody out so that he can get there. So when he finally became the richest man, I think he must have realized something. This is not what makes me the happiest. And suddenly he gives half his wealth to this Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He convinces Warren Buffett and other billionaires to invest there. But I urge you to watch Netflix, Minds of Bill Gates. He's coming up with innovations that are far more powerful than Microsoft was, ever, and will be. He's come up with this money with a nuclear plant that is so safe. It has continuing cheap energy. In fact, China was willing to buy several of it, put up several nuclear plants. But Donald Trump and the conservatives said, no. Besides, they're protecting U.S. interests. And of course, it was not done. It's come up in drought areas with waterless toilets in South Africa, massive amounts of money to eradicate diseases in Africa, Ebola, HIV, malaria. And all of these innovations, if you look at it, each one aims to save the world. Each one aims to make the earth a better place to live in. So he is what my friend Jay Bernardo calls the new billionaire. The new billionaire that will impact, not have $1 billion dollars, but have 1 billion people impacted. But notice, I think, if all of this waterless toilet, and water will be another area of crisis in the future, as will food be. then this idea will fly. Energy. Now we've seen how fossil fuel and all of that has really destroyed the world. And we're looking for the cheapest source. Safe, but cheap. And each of these investments, if they fly, will make him 10 times richer than Microsoft. But that's just a result. That's just a result. And this time, why was he doing it? Altruism, for love of humanity. The willingness, the motivation to say, I am not just making myself rich. I'm going to make the world a much, much better place to live in. But that requires a far greater innovation, because nuclear energy has been around, but our technology is a technology of the 30 years ago. We haven't innovated because there was no crisis to propel us, to force us to do so. The waterless toilet in Africa because there was a drought. That was driven to do that. So we stay where we are because times are good. But sometimes we have to create an artificial crisis to propel us to become bigger, bolder, and better than we are. Right now, our My Tree Foundation, we've been making money, going to the field, going to education, training, research. But with this COVID, we have to completely reinvent ourselves. And while everybody is getting scared, they said, no. I will not stop paying the salary up to June. We will strategize, we will navigate, we will put our people together, they're a major resource. And when this crisis ends, we will be the first horse of the block. That's the kind of attitude we should have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for a mesmerizing presentation, as always. It looked as if we were in the case room of Ben Press or Meralco.
Not quite, not quite.
But 75 minutes of scintillating talk and inspirational talk. So I'll just, there's a question from Sanjay Chaudhary. I'll just unmute him. Sanjay, please go ahead.
Yes, Sanjay.
Hi, Prof. Nice seeing you after MBM 94. My question to you, I liked your comment that you don't drive into the future looking at the rearview mirror. But given what you've talked about AIM, your experiences, why do leadership ignore the Cassandras in the organization? What is your view about it?
People ignore them because the Cassandras, the prophets, are foretelling the futures, which will change the way they're doing things today. And people are always comfortable in the status quo. Most companies are. I just want you to review your board meetings, your management meetings. And it looks like the same thing you're talking about meeting after meeting after meeting. There's nobody that says, you know what, let's go this way. And when that person says it, everybody looks at him. What are you talking about? So then he starts conforming again. I was asked by a pharmaceutical company, Sanjay, once. This general manager, an expatriate from Brazil, told me, Ed, my people, they don't have a sense of urgency. They're not innovators. I want our company to be at the forefront. I said, before I do a whole training of your people on leadership and management, can I talk to all 34 of your officers? So I talked to each one. I thought I'll only take, I just had two questions. What do you like about this company? What don't you like about this company? Each of those 15-minute supposedly survey time turned into 2 hours each. Oh, they gave me lamentations upon lamentations upon lamentations. And what they told me bothered me very much. How can we innovate? This company has tons and tons of policies and manuals.
protocols, procedures, that if you violate them, your neck gets cut. So we all stay safe and secure. Better not put our necks out there. And I heard this from the 34. Are we crazy? Let him decide. So anyway, I told that to them, okay, you will invest in their leadership, in their innovation. I said, but unless you are willing to listen to mavericks, crazy ideas, and ask yourself, is there something behind that? You will not listen to the Cassandras of the world. Now, I'm not talking about people who will just mouth prophecies without any evidence. No, I am a believer in evidence science. But the good thing, as I was talking about earlier, the evidence of the future is already here today. But one of the weakest departments in many companies I have done strategic planning for is their planning department. I think those planning departments are meant to have junkets. They're not really planning departments. And I've handled Philippine Airlines, Allied Bank, Victoria's Mills. Oh, humongous companies. Very, very weak planning company. So what does it mean? Very, very weak futuristic thinking. And who are the managers? The managers in finance, handling the present. The managers marketing, handling the present product lines and brands. Oh, they don't want to lose that. This is a brand I built from babyhood. So all of them have vested interest. That's why it's so hard to break. So hard. Difficult. So my advice for companies, spend 90% of your time thinking about the future and only 10% about the past.
Prof, the question, remember that you had asked me for topics, and I had given you 5 topics, and you chose transformational leadership in that, correct? I mean, the topic which you chose to, the topic was suggested by this gentleman called Ravi Valecha. So I'm giving him the opportunity to ask you a question. It was his, yeah. Ravi, go ahead.
Thanks, Nikhil. Good evening, Professor. Good to hear you again. My question is, while you elaborated quite well on the transformative leadership and the growing trends, my question is, with regards to the new trends which will emerge, we are seeing quite strong leaders across the world, which are more and more nationalistic. Rather than going global, they are thinking about their own national interest first and then about the others. What do you think about this style of leadership?
Again, proper discernment. Proper discernment, you sit back, take a longer point of view. The world has always swung in a pendulum. However, the futuristic mind has known for many, many millennia that people will take us to one extreme to the other. But in the end, the middle will always win. And so when I see trends, before, I would see trends like people wearing blue hair and all sorts of crazy makeup, bizarre. And then people that are wearing cutie, doll-like dresses. And these are extremes. But in the end, it comes to the middle. Tattoos. Before, everybody fills the body with tattoos. Then some people didn't like tattoos. But now people have little tattoos. And that has become the middle. In the end, the middle wins. Now let's talk about leadership. There's always a swing. But hopefully, as you swing, you get higher and higher. You get better and better. I'll just give you one example, and I don't know whether that's true for your country, but it's true for the Philippines. We had Macapagal as president. He was kind of weak. I think he was handpicked by his wife. And then Marcos comes along, strong leader. People, we need a strong leader. Okay. First 10 years of martial law doing it. And then he got sick. And people say, no, we need a kinder, gentler leader, Cory. But Cory couldn't manage energy, couldn't manage the economy. There were a lot of coups. And then people said, I think we should shift back to strong leadership. So there was Ramos again. military. He was really part of that the martial law. But they elected him. Things went there. But said, oh, maybe we need a more pro people. We don't like. So they went to Iraq, very pro people, blah 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 blah. Who saw? Midnight cabinets, drinking. Who saw? So they elected this no-nonsense, strong leader, Gloria Macapagal, for strength. And she's the one really that came up with the strong policy, and all that. And then people said, oh, no, we don't want her. Let's go to, again, a weak. And the weak leader, Pinoy, was very, very poor at crisis. He was good. The economy was good. But his failure, that's why his party lost, was they were never able to manage the crisis. The Hong Kong crisis, the Mapasapalo crisis, the Yolanda crisis, the Zamboanga crisis. That's where they fell apart. Not in managing the good time. That was the best time in the Philippines. And then Duterte comes along, strong. And I said, you know what? If trends continue, we will swing to the big. Now, if you look at history in a big, big way, this is a reaction to we are one big, happy, global family. But what happened? In each of these countries, there were people who got left behind tremendously. And they were the ones that voted for Brexit. They were the ones that voted for popular people. They're now the ones who are saying, you know what? Russia, we got humiliated. The walls came down. We lost our countries. We love this guy Putin that will give us back strength, give us back our, as did Hitler doing after World War I when Germany was humiliated. So you have to look at it from the perspective of a distance. That's why when I tell my students, I don't like the five-year evidence. I want long-term. I want you to see the trends and patterns very well. But there must be a reason driving us to these strong leaders. What was it? Not too much democracy, too much bureaucracy, and the world moves at a slow pace. Remember I told you? Democratic style works when everything's stable. But stability doesn't mean you will reach the height of your greatness. And that's sometimes people are agitating for. We want more. Why are we behind? The Greeks will say, why are we behind France? The Italians will say, why are we behind the Germans? Why are they controlling the EU? So people react. And so there is a movement towards strong populist presidents. And if they mishandle it, there will be a pendulum swing. So don't be overly concerned about the little swings. They will happen. Be comforted in the fact that in the end, the middle wins. In other words, society today, 2020, is a much, much better society than 1920, believe me, or 1820, or 1720. We have far better working institutions, international global institutions. These leaders will come and go, but it's the whole wave of humanity that will keep us moving forward. So my belief is, crisis by historical antecedents always brings humanity higher and higher. Always. And there's an entire human history to back me up. Okay.
Thank you, Prof. You have been 90 minutes on the chat, and it's past dinner time in the Philippines. And your energy and the sparkle in your eye is still there, what we saw in the early 90s, late 90s for us. I hope that we can do this more often, once a quarter or something, with newer ideas. If you can allocate time to us so that we can interact with you on a more frequent basis. I don't know how you can do that. That is the only thing, because alumni all over.
Well,
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
It's a great pleasure, Nikki. Very great pleasure for me.
Sir. So I'll keep in touch, and from all of us, we should wish you a very sound health. We want you for at least next 25, 30 years, so we can hear a lot of pearls of wisdom. So thank you very much, sir.
If I live for 25 more, then I can be immortal, but not today.
Thank you very much, sir. Salamat,
Thank you very
sir.
much, guys.
Salamat, sir. Salamat.
Salamat.
Salamat.